Okay, so the title is slightly clickbait. Yeonwoo's Innocence is my favorite webtoon because I don't really read webtoon, so it got the title by process of elimination. But I swear it's actually really good, just stick with me. This is a romance story, and while I'm not usually into romance stuff, like at all, the fact that the male leads are basically a reversal of the standard romance tropes made me interesting enough to check it out. And since the series recently started getting an official English translation, I thought it'd be a good time to share my thoughts on it and maybe try and convince some of you guys to read it too. So stick with me for the next 5-ish minutes and let me tell you why this series is some real peak. The premise of the story is pretty simple. Our protagonist, Yeonwoo, is a short, socially awkward teenager who has a crush on the school's popular girl, Hazel, who is tall and cool and constantly gets asked out and is good at everything. Over time, the two grow closer together and eventually become a cutesy date, and can you tell that I'm not very good at describing romance plots? I already briefly mentioned this, but I like this premise a lot, since it's basically an inversion of the typical boy-girl dynamic you see in romance stories. Here the dynamic is flipped, where Yeonwoo is a small, cutesy, and very traumatized lead, while Hazel is the strong, capable, popular girl, and I'm honestly such a sucker for that dynamic. It's even a running theme in the earlier chapters that Yeonwoo often gets mistaken for a girl, which is definitely not gonna be the catalyst for a very traumatic backstory later. Nah, what are you talking about? Anyway, from there the story has a pretty slow pace. It takes about 25 chapters for Yeonwoo to even admit his feelings to Hazel, which I know turns a lot of people away from the series, but personally, I really dig it. The slow burn makes every advancement in the relationship feel that much more special and important. I legit started kicking my feet in excitement like a little schoolgirl when these two hugged for the first time. You guys don't even understand how giddy I felt. And that happens because we spend so long with these characters and understand what each small step in the relationship means to them. Speaking of the characters, the series does a really good job of handling the supporting cast. There's only 6 really important characters, including the main couple, but I think that benefits the story a lot since it gives it time to flesh it out properly. My favorite is probably Jinwoo because he starts out as kind of a dick, while also serving as a sort of rival to Yeonwoo since he too has a crush on Hazel. But instead of just devolving him into some antagonistic asshole for the rest of the story, the series goes out of its way to show us that he is a good person at heart and dedicates multiple mini-arcs to exploring his struggles. He even helps Yeonwoo out several times and they end up being pretty close friends. It's important to mention that he still maintains the bold personality he had at the start. It's just that now both we and the characters know him more and understand that he isn't being malicious. It honestly really surprised me considering my initial impression of him was just a generic love triangle rival character. Pretty much every major character gets some development like this, and this is where I think the slow pace really shines through again. Because we get to spend a lot of time with the characters in a bunch of unique situations instead of just rushing through all of their backstory and growth in like 5 chapters. These backstories can also get really dark, often dwelling into topics like bullying and emotional and sexual abuse, but while it's all heavy stuff, it never feels like it's just there for the sake of edginess. Because we can see how these traumatic events have shaped its characters' behavior and we watch them try to work through them with each other's help. There's about 20 or so chapters dedicated almost entirely to Yeonwoo's middle school days and how that affected his relationship with his best friend Janhyuk, and how a lot of his self-loathing is a product of the events that happened then. While again it's all really dark and I'm not planning on rereading them anytime soon, the payoff and getting to see him work through his issues with Janhyuk felt incredibly cathartic. And that's the key here, catharsis. When something traumatic or heartbreaking is shown either as a flashback or in the present day, it isn't just there to make the reader sad. There is always going to be some sort of emotional payoff and growth that the characters experience because of it. The arc following the middle school chapters is another really great example of what I'm talking about, this time focusing on the true nature of Yeonwoo's and Hazel's relationship. It's hard to get into without major spoilers, but just note the payoff to it is probably the best set of chapters in the entire series. Anyway, enough with the heavy stuff. On some lighter praise, the art is really good. Not only that, but the art style changes quite a bit throughout the series, going from this simpler pencil-drawn-esque style to a more detailed style filled with a lot of shading. It's always really cool to me to see how a creator's art style changes over time, and this comic in particular is one of the most interesting examples. Also, one thing that I really appreciate about the series is that there isn't really any annoying fan service going on. Maybe this is my anime brain speaking, cause I'm not sure how often this happens in other webtoons or manhwa, but it's really jarring and distracting when an otherwise good series throws in some very unnecessary fan service. Thankfully there really isn't any of this here. The closest we get is a few scenes of Yeonwoo and Hazel getting intimate, but that feels more of a natural progression of their relationship rather than fan service for the sake of fan service. Anyway, that's about all I want to say. If anything I mentioned here sounds interesting, I highly recommend reading through the series yourself. I promise it's great. Also, make sure to follow the creator Sol on social media. They post a bunch of cutesy art there that I just really love, and they honestly deserve a lot of support. If you enjoyed this video, remember to leave a like and subscribe, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye!